Subnet Masks by David Powers. Part 1. He held the styrofoam cup of new calf in both hands, inhaling the faintly coffee-smelling steam, stealing his warmth like a witch steals a soul. His fingers were coming back to life, the numbness leaving his hands as the cup of heated stimulants chased away the chill of the Maine evening. He took a sip, the vaguely coffee-like taste washing over his tongue, replaced an instant later by the sharp tinge of chemicals and copper. His face was lit by green neon, advertising something in Japanese, the light accentuating the dark circles under his eyes. He was just another neon-lit face in a sea of neon-lit faces, kept alive by new calf and rice. Paycheck to paycheck, the new ideal, half his life spent in cyberspace. Just another American, in other words. His name was Braxton Gargarian, and he lived in the Lewiston Auburn development, a colossal living organism of people as cells, crammed into high-rises and 30 by 30 boxes jokingly called apartments. Enough room for a bed, a kitchenette, a toilet, and maybe a desk. Each box, Braxton refused to refer to it as anything but, did come with electricity and a cyber deck. And the electricity was constant, more or less. Much better than his old apartment in Cadden's Landing. He watched two matte black Arconian Sendai security drones wind by overhead and sipped his new calf as they took off towards the park districts, where the descendants of Somali refugees were probably living while Muslim again. Not illegal in itself, but when it came to Arconian Sendai, that was enough. Shaking his head, he brought his hand into his coat pocket, fished a cheap German cigarette, a Black Eagle, out of its pack, and brought it to his mouth. The end sparked to life, and he exhaled a blue cloud of smoke. "Fucking pigs," he heard a voice say from the mouth of an alley, cloaked in shadow, a rare occurrence in this part of town. "Fucking drones are everywhere." "Hover pigs," another voice chimed in, a female voice scratchy with too much hard drink and too much smoke. It giggled in reply, "Wish I could pop 'em right out of the fucking sky." The first voice laughed, which broke into a coughing fit. "Fucking cold." Braxton walked by as quickly as he could before he was asked for either money or a smoke. He drained the last of his new calf and crushed the styrofoam in his fist. Crossed the street at a diagonal, threw down the cigarette, grinding the butt under the heel of his boot. He mentally counted what cred he still had on his card, nodded, and walked into the Spice Walk. "Evening," an elderly Asian woman yelled from behind the counter. He nodded in response, glancing around the restaurant. It was small, filthy, the walls painted an obnoxious orange color, and it was like coming back home. The menu behind the woman was printed in English, Spanish, German, Japanese, and Chinese. There was one table occupied, a couple, eating lo mein, sharing a plate. Either it was they were broke or just romantic. Braxton couldn't tell. "What can I get for you?" the woman whose name tag read Ling asked. "The usual?" He nodded again, gave her a small smile. "Yeah, can I get it a bit spicy, maybe a 6? The woman smiled back. "Ate too much?" "It was good, but kept me awake for 2 nights. She laughed. "That be $16, she said in her fake Chinese accent. He took out his card. That would leave him just enough for another pack of Black Eagles. He got paid again in 2 days. But the Spice Walk was always worth it. She handed him back a card and receipt. "Go sit," she motioned to a table with a pair of chopsticks she had somehow conjured into her hand. He did, finding a table with minimal peeling plastic covering. He poured himself a small paper cup of distilled water that smelled slightly of chlorine. 5 minutes went by when the door opened, the bell rang, an old-fashioned charm that Braxton loved. 3 men walked in, shivering from the cold air. He knew them, had gone to school with one of them. "Yo, Braxton," one called over, a man wearing a navy blue Red Sox cap and a black Yankees jacket. "Jacob Kent." He had worked with him for a while at the Arconian Sendai factory, making parts for machines that killed people through bedroom windows. But a job was a job, and in Luob, the dirty Lou, Lewiscombe, Lewiston, Auburn, a job was hard to come by. Hey, Jacob, I already ordered. You guys want to sit here, or are you on a date? Braxton called back. Sure, we'll sit with you. We'll just order some grub first. Braxton gave the A-OK gesture and almost regretted inviting them over, but it was late. And if some sinner came in looking for trouble, they always preyed on the people sitting alone, and he'd be damned if he would let a sinner rob him. He took another sip of water, tapped a knuckle on the table, an ashtray attached to a mechanical arm dropped down from the wall. He took out another Black Eagle, the German smoke lighting itself when it hit his mouth. He took a long drag, exhaled, flicked the ash into a tray. At the counter, they ordered, came over. Jacob, Brendan, with a 3, and Kayvon, which was his illiterate mother's way of spelling Kevin, he supposed, sat down. Greetings, boys, he said. He watched Jacob and Brendan take out their own smokes, and a cloud formed over the table before the vent fan turned on, sucking it up and out. Kayvon stayed silent, not moving. You need a smoke, Cave? Jacob shook his head. Kayvon here has joined the Space Mormons. Space Mormons? Braxton asked. Yeah, you know, the Mormons that live in those orbital ships. Jacob exhaled smoke into Kayvon's face. No, Braxton replied honestly. Oh, well, shit, man, watch some fucking TV. Anyway, these Mormon cultists didn't like the way the Californians were invading Utah or some shit and blasted up into orbit. And our little KK here is joining them. Braxton looked at Kayvon and eyebrow raised. Really? Well, Kayvon said, yeah, well, I mean, my mom converted last year, and I thought your mom was a Scientologist, Braxton interrupted. She was. So, yeah, we'll be leaving next year, I guess, Kayvon finished. Aren't you 30? Braxton asked. 29. Shit, dude, Jacob broke in. You're a fucking adult. Why are... Because, man, have you seen Mormon Woman? So you're blasting into space for space pussy? Braxton asked, crushing out his smoke. Kayvon blushed. I'm getting married up there, yeah. Braxton started laughing and was still barking with laughter when the Asian woman came up with their table with his food. Scrambled eggs over fried rice, hot sauce smeared over the yellow. He began eating, picking the food up with chopsticks provided. Married, eh? Braxton asked around a mouthful of egg. Yeah, she seems sweet, named Jane. You haven't met her? Brendan asked. He brought a hand to his shaved head, which shone in a way that always surprised Braxton. It was always shiny. Huh. No, not yet, Kayvon replied. We've talked, audio only, and I've seen her avatar on the net, of course. Your avatars make it yet? Jacob asked. What? No. The rest of the food was delivered, and Braxton could see the relief in Kayvon's eyes. He almost felt bad for the guy. Kayvon had 2 hot dog egg rolls, Jacob mock fried rice, Brendan chicken lo mein. They ate in silence for a while until plates were more or less clean. They sat back, drank distilled water, and smoked, shooting the shit. The bell above the door rang again. 2 men in Arconian Sendai body armor, automatic rifles at their hips, walked in. One white man, Middle Eastern, the other Asian, probably Korean. They walked to the ordered food. They walked to the counter, ordered food loudly, practicing their authority voices, Braxton supposed. Ling bowed shallowly and went to the back to prepare their dishes. Fucking Sevikin, the Middle Eastern man said under his breath as they passed the table, just loud enough to hear. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Brendan shook his head, remained silent, and just smoked his cigarette. Braxton could tell the man was pissed, but not taking the bait. Some of these corporate security were just assholes, like this one here. Jacob shrugged, crushed out his butt. My old lady is going to kill me if I don't leave soon. Brendan made a whipping sound and they laughed again. Keep it down, the Middle Eastern security officer said firmly. Jacob rolled his eyes. Asshole, he said softly, then gave him a thumbs up. What's with him? Kayvon asked. Braxton shrugged and stood up. I gotta hit the bunk too. Work early. Jacob rose to join him. They lived in adjacent buildings. I'll join you. Kayvon, Brendan, have a good evening. Enjoy your date. Ah, fuck you, Brendan said, a smile on his face. He stood up and placed another cigarette into his mouth. The 4 of them walked out of the spice walk. A hovercar whirled overhead, headlights washing the buildings in white. As they stood outside the door saying their goodbyes, the car lowered until its landing wheels came out and it rested on the street. A door opened with a hiss. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out, eyes yellow. They stepped back from the door to let him pass. The man didn't even look at them. "Seems a bit well off to be a sinner," Jacob said softly to Braxton as they moved down the block. "Maybe he's a supplier," he replied. "One that uses?" "Well, I've seen weirder shit," Braxton shrugged. "True." Gunshots rang out at the Spice Walk. "Oh, shit," Jacob shouted, turning back. The man in the charcoal suit ran out of the restaurant, jumped into his hovercar, and pivoted the vehicle as it took off. The man's yellow eyes fixed on Braxton's, and he winked. Then the hovercar was gone, up into the sky, blasting south. Security drones, their sirens almost deafening, screamed to their location. "Vacate the street!" a mechanical voice shouted, the volume so loud it was distorted, came out of each, out of sync by half a second, creating a strange echoing effect. "Return to your homes by order of Lewiston Auburn and the Arconian Sendai Security Force. Again, return to your homes. You may be harmed. This is a crime scene." They didn't need to be told twice. They sped up, not talking until they rounded the corner. There they stopped, lit another cigarette. Holy shit, Jacob said twice in rapid succession. "You think that center hit those two security assholes?" Braxton shrugged. "I hope it was them and not Ling," Jacob asked. "Me too, and her real name is Sarah." "I know, her accent is bullshit too, it's all part of the charm." Two security cruisers sped past them, sirens wailing. A copter could be heard over them. "Yeah, I guess it was them. ArcSend wouldn't bring out this much for one restaurant owner." Braxton nodded. "This'll be all over the net, and I can see it getting bad out here. An excuse to round up the sinners." Jacob shrugged. "So all it takes for them to improve a neighborhood is to shoot a cop. Good to know." "Ha!" Braxton shook his head. "Sinners fight back, usually. Let's get home." "Good deal," Jacob replied. They reached their buildings a few minutes later, said their goodbyes, and Braxton made his way up to his box, took his coat off, stripped down to his boxers, and laid on his bed, a sheetless mattress on the floor. "A good thing I never pick up chicks," he mused to himself. A half pot of new calf lay on the counter on the kitchenette. Not that you needed to brew it, but tradition was tradition. Clothes were strewn over the floor. Half-eaten plates of rice and rehydrated beans lay in the small sink. Braxton grabbed his cyberdeck, took the hookups, plugged into the jacks implanted in his wrist, closed his eyes, and jacked in.